Hello athletes, this is Travis and we are back for another training video. It's been a little bit scarce on the educational front, but kind of like many of us, just been kind of trying to stay busy figuring out how to pay the bills in this weird COVID world where there's no teams to coach. But always happy to kind of use my free time to educate you guys and hopefully help you in your training. Speaking of kind of trying to pay the bills and not having anybody to kind of coach on a day-to-day basis, if you guys are interested in kind of working a little bit more closely with me other than just watching these videos, please make sure that you're checking out gtsrowing.com. There's options there for both consulting and remote coaching, so definitely check that out. Sign up if you want to benefit from all this knowledge kind of firsthand. But getting into the meat of the subject today, we are going to talk about something that I kind of can't believe I haven't talked about already. This is definitely up my alley as kind of a former physics major and somebody who loves kind of the hows of training and why things work. But we are going to be talking about the power curve today and exactly what it is telling you, how to use it, what to avoid with the power curve, and definitely what you should be aiming to achieve with that power curve. And even for people who are kind of familiar with the power curve, there might be a couple little tidbits of knowledge in here that you may not be kind of aware of in terms of ensuring that your power curve is shaped the way that you want it. All right, and so for those that have been rowing on the Concept 2 with that performance monitor, you know that there's kind of a rudimentary power curve option available there. Now, I will say that the Concept 2 power curve is just that. It is very rudimentary, all right? It is not a very highly detailed power curve. If you want a much higher quality, a much more informative power curve, then the RP3, the Row Perfect, is definitely the machine for you. Though, unless you are a competitive rower and perhaps even a higher level competitive rower, you probably don't need to purchase one of those machines because you are paying for that kind of high level of technology, all right? And unfortunately, you're not paying for the robustness because you're gonna get a very well-tuned, highly calibrated machine that can't take nearly the beating that the Concept 2 can. But that's my little pitch there for the RP3. If you want to pick one of those up, let's move into that power curve. And so I will say before I kind of dive into kind of a detailed in-depth discussion of the power curve is that if you are an on-the-water rower and you do not have a good power curve, you will never be a good on-the-water rower, all right? There is no way to be successful moving a boat on the water if you do not have an appropriate power application, all right? And that power application is going to represent itself in your power curve. Now, if you are an indoor rower, which I'm sure many of the people watching this channel are, that is also still important. You will probably be able to achieve some measure of success as an indoor rower, in large part because you're dealing with a much larger population, and so it's easier to kind of get to the top because there's more people to beat relative to yourself if you're training very well. But if you are not applying your power properly, you are certainly not going to reach your best performance, and therefore you're not going to reach a high level performance on the indoor rower on a grander scale than just kind of your local or maybe regional community, all right? And so the reason for this is because the power curve is going to represent an ideal application of power. Now on the water, that is essential for moving the boat effectively. On the land, it is essential for getting the most bang for your buck, all right? And so that is kind of all the hows and whys, and I will kind of dive a little bit into understanding the details of why that power curve is helpful and why, if you do not have a good power application as represented by that curve, you are not going to be able to move a boat effectively and you are not going to be very efficient on the indoor rower. Let's go ahead and jump into the power curves themselves, all right? So we got the whiteboard ready for some drawing, and first let's start with what your power curve should look like, all right? And so we have here your power curve should be high, it should peak quick, and it should come down symmetrically, all right? This is your power curve, all right? And so the characteristic of the power curve, you have a smooth rise and fall of the power, all right? You have a high peak, all right? So you want that up, all right? And that you want it ideally fairly symmetrical. Now it is gonna be okay to kind of shift that peak a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, maybe a little bit more so to the left, all right, especially if you're rowing on the water and you're rowing in a fast boat like an 8 or a quad, then shifting that peak to the left is going to be helpful for you and maybe essential for you. But for the most part, this is what your power curve should look like, all right? Now, things that your power curve should not look like that might maintain, let's say, the shape of the curve is a shallow power curve, all right? So you do not want a low peak, all right? You want it to be a little mountain. You don't want it to be a little hill, all right? You definitely don't want it to be a mount, all right? And this is gonna be something that I see a lot with kind of the weaker rowers out there, or maybe the older rowers that aren't able to produce the same kind of peak power. But we are gonna be talking about even with low amounts of power, you can create a high peak on your power curve, all right? And so that is not a sign that you are slow. That is a sign that you are not applying your power effectively, all right? And so sometimes a lot too, you might also get kind of a low peak and an elongated, all right, drive, all right? We don't want a super long drive, and I've talked about this in the other videos. Generally you want that drive somewhere between maybe a 0.65, 0.75 seconds on your drive time. And a lot of people, especially kind of tall youth athletes that I've worked with, maybe girls that are like, 6 foot, 5'11", maybe up to 6'2", that they will just have this long, slow, soft, kind of soggy bread type of drive, all right? And that's what their power curve is going to look like, all right? And that athlete is not going to be very effective in the water, regardless of how tall and ideal their body may be for rowing, because their legs are not moving quick enough to actually connect to the water and accelerate the boat, all right? Especially in a big boat where they're surrounded by people who are quick, all right, and are powerful, all right? So these are a couple things that we don't want to see. Now, as little indications of what this could be a sign, one, you may not be getting enough torque on your drive, all right, as you're going through that drive sequence, all right? And so we've talked about drive sequencing before in other videos as well, and that is, for me, kind of a good basic 101 drive sequencing is initiate with the body, initiate with the legs with the body in that forward angle, arms fully suspended so that your power is transferring through your skeleton and not through your muscles. Hold that body angle just like you would hold your body angle if you're doing a squat. Hold your body angle as you're going through that drive about halfway through the drive when your legs are at a 90-degree angle. Then you want to start drawing the body, and pretty soon after you start drawing the body, you want to also start drawing the arms, perhaps maybe even when the arm, but definitely no later than when the body is at vertical. But you want to initiate with the legs, start to bring in the body past 90 degrees where the legs start to weaken, and then start to bring in the arms as the body is no longer able to hold and supplement the legs on its own, and when you need more quickness, all right? Because you're moving from a slower, heavier part of the stroke to a lighter, faster part of the stroke as you get to the release. So you're going to use your strong but slow muscles in the early part, and you're going to use your weaker but quicker muscles in the later part of the drive, all right? So if you are not doing that effectively, that is going to create kind of this flattish power curve, all right? If you're getting a good kind of torque, especially through the middle of that drive sequence, that is going to drive the peak of your power curve up. Now, another little trick that you may find with this is that, say you're torquing really good, or maybe in order to really get that good torque, that is shooting your split down to the point where it is not sustainable for whatever energy zone that you're trying to work on that given day. So then the problem might be with your damper setting, all right? So your damper setting might be too high, all right? And so if your damper setting is too high, then in order to hit the split that you're supposed to be hitting, you are gonna have to go slow on the legs, all right? And we don't wanna be slow on the legs because that is not an efficient way to produce impulse, and it's definitely not an effective way to move a boat, all right? And I had an entire video where I talked about kind of damper setting and the importance of damper setting with training your leg speed on the drive, all right? And so I'll kind of link that up here. You guys can check it out after this video if you would like to. But if your damper is too high, then the only way you're gonna be able to torque it is by getting your split down, and that is gonna push you out of your training zone. So you don't want to do that. So then lower your damper setting, all right? So lower your damper setting, and that will get you to the place, and will also help you figure out what damper setting is appropriate for whatever training that you're trying to achieve, all right? So get the damper setting that will allow you to do all the other things right, and then get that peak nice and high at whatever split that you're wanting to do. Now, there is kind of a little pitfall there with that, all right? That is not the solve all your problems, all right, solution there to just lower your drag factor, all right? That is assuming you're doing everything else right, all right? And since I'm not coaching you, I can't tell you if you're doing everything else right, but at least it'll give you something to experiment with, all right? So if you are getting a flat curve, try bringing that drag factor down. It may help you, all right? And kind of as a general thing, so you don't have to go through and watch all my videos. As an example, for me, as someone who has dropped 2Ks at my peak in the 620s, you know, and now even at kind of as a just kind of recreational, doesn't row very much, but mainly runs rower, I probably drop like, you know, high 640s or something like that, all right? I would do my steady state, all right, if I'm just getting back into conditioning, somewhere in the 75 maybe to 80, 85 range. Once I'm really into it and I'm kind of good shape, it would be somewhere between 85 and 100. Right now, since I'm doing most of my training in sprints, I usually do my steady state at 100, or I'll do it at 90 if I want to take it a little bit easy that day, all right? But those are my drag factors, all right, for a relatively fit, lightweight masters male. And then for my youth athletes, if my girls that are training, youth girls, then generally they're gonna be somewhere between 75 and 85. The youth boys are generally gonna be somewhere between 75 to 85 if they're small and they haven't hit puberty yet, or somewhere between 85 and 95-ish, maybe 100. Not too many people going up to 100 for those youth men for their steady states, all right? And steady state, I generally say, should be about 20 at least below your racing drag factor, maybe up to 30, all right? So that's quick there. So drag factors, that's one way. That's in terms of the peak of your curve and the shape of the curve. Now this is assuming that you even have a smooth application in the first place, which may not be you, all right? So you might have, again, let's draw the ideal curve. Down, over, the ideal curve, up and then down, all right? So again, also said that you could have an ideal curve if you just peak a little bit sooner. And as long as your star, that even if that comes down here, that's fine as well. So even if you're peaking a little bit sooner, no problem, all right? As long as you're smooth, as long as you have a smooth rise to your peak, all right? And this is gonna be typical too if you're on the water of athletes in a faster boat, all right? Because you're gonna need to get onto that power quicker in order to connect to the speed of the boat and therefore apply effective work. Interestingly, in a boat like the Pear, which is so small, and the athletes are on each side, and each side has certainly the bow has a significant effect on the turning torque on the boat. You are actually going to want to match those athletes in a way where your stroke is going to be shifted to the left, all right? So maybe this dotted line here, and your bow is going to be shifted a little bit to the right, all right? Usually you want in your boat your power curves to line up perfectly. In the Pear, that is not the case, all right? You want to apply your power a little bit differently. It's very interesting. But that's that. So let's talk about what I do not want, all right? And what most of you are gonna see, and that even I see when I'm not paying attention and I'm being a little bit lazy on the erg when I'm doing my steady state. All right, is that if you are coming up and you have a little inflection point, that is not a good sign. All right, that is an indication that you have kind of lost your connection at somewhere between the transition of the legs and the body. All right, there may be other things, but that is definitely the most likely culprit. All right, so that you have kind of driven those legs, and then the legs have started to peter out a little bit before the body kicks in. All right, and that is not a good thing. All right, that is a boat speed killer on the water, and on the indoor rower. It's not particularly great for your back, and it's definitely not the most efficient way to produce power. Therefore, you're not going to be able to produce as much power. All right, we're talking about fractions of a percent, but if you want to perform at a high level, fractions of a percent matter. All right, but this inflection point is not good. All right, and so if you're seeing this inflection point, you really need to focus on that. One, making sure that you are engaging the legs with the body forward. And two is that when you do bring that body into the drive sequence, into the power application, that you are doing it smoothly and effectively, and you are building upon what the legs are doing, and it's not kind of a two-part drive, all right? And so you want to get rid of any of these inflection points, all right? Other things that are bad, all right, is we have the kind of weird peak there, all right? Also, something is happening where when you are supplementing the power application at the back end of the stroke with the upper body, all right? And then anything worse than that is a major problem, all right? And so, you know, I don't even, you know, it's been so long since I've seen like atrocious rowing, all right, that haven't been kind of worked with at least me or learned with me, all right? So hopefully we get rid of these big problems in the first day or two of the rowing. But certainly if you've kind of taught yourself this, if you haven't had the benefit of professional coaching when you just picked up the sport and just started on that indoor rower, or maybe you hopped on a gym and then you liked it and you liked what it did and you're kind of watching videos like this, if you have something that's more kind of disjointed than this, then you definitely need to work on that. All right, you need to watch a lot of videos about drive sequencing and proper power application. One is that you should be squeezing through the drive, and this is a big thing, all right? So the drive should be a squeeze, all right? It should be like squeezing the gas pedal on an icy road, all right, when you're trying to kind of get up and get moving, all right? If you press too hard, you're gonna spin out, all right? Same thing with the water. If you try to rip that oar too hard, it's not gonna grip the water and you're just gonna kind of rip water, you're gonna splash, all right? On the erg, that slamming is going to affect your body, all right? It's gonna be kind of, you know, weird kind of pounding pressure either on your back, on your joints or whatnot, instead of the squeeze of pressing that accelerator button or that accelerator pedal firm to get up and get moving on that road, but not to push it so much that you're spinning out and losing traction, all right? And so you need to practice that, and you need to find those videos if that power curve is kind of deviating. But that's it. Lots of nerdy stuff there. Lots of stuff for you guys to chew on. Hopefully you have a very clear idea of why you need a good power curve, what that good power curve is, a little bit of tips in terms of how to achieve that power curve. If I failed to explain that in any way, just throw a comment down below and I'll try to do a little bit better job with that. But that's it. So, you know, if this is your first time finding the channel, subscribe, throw that little kind of, you know, floaty button there, pop up, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like the video to give it a little thumbs up. YouTube likes it, it shares it with more people randomly on their algorithm. The more people kind of thumbs up and comment and subscribe and all the fun stuff, all right? So if you want to help the channel out, you can do all those things so that other people kind of find out that I'm here and that I'm kind of throwing all this information out to you guys in the community. But that's it. Check out GTS Rowing if you want a little bit of kind of one-on-one coaching yourself, either a consultation call where I can answer any of your questions or an actual kind of regular remote coaching relationship. I am more than happy to work with any athletes that are willing to do the work and want to improve. But that's it. This is Travis signing off. Thanks everybody, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.